Okay, so we're continuing Martin Heidegger. The portal of an early Romanesque church is a being. How and to whom being does it reveal itself? To the art historian who visits and photographs it on an excursion, or to the abbot who passes through the portal with his monks for a religious celebration, or to the children who plays in its shadow on a summer's day? How does it stand with being of this being? A state it is. What does its being consist in? In the fact that the state police arrest a suspect, or that in a minister of the Reich so and so many typewriters clatter away and record the dictation of the state secretaries and ministers? Or is the state in the discussion between the Führer and the English foreign ministers? The state is, but where is being to be found? It is located anywhere at all? So I'd argue that the being of a state exists within its laws. The leader is a figurehead of the being, right? The crown, let's say they have a crown. The crown is a symbol, but it's like the skin of the being. That's how I'd put it. The being of a state exists through the laws, because through the laws that will manifest the spirit of the state, right? I would not say that it's through the leader of itself. I'd say it's through the laws. So yes, the leaders will legislate, right? They will vote on things, they'll pass things, blah, 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 blah. But when those policies, that is where I believe the being lies within the state. Not with the police. Yes, the police are enforcing the laws, but they are not the being itself. They are bringing the being into being by taking it in the suspect and applying the being's being. That's how I'd argue. A painting by Van Gogh, a pair of sturdy peasant shoes, nothing else. The picture really represents nothing. Yet you are alone at once with what is there, as if you yourself were heading homeward from the field on a late autumn evening, tired with your hoe. At last the potato fires smolder out. What is in being here? The canvas, the brushstroke, the patches of color, and everywhere we have mentioned what is being of beings. Okay, so when it comes to a painting, I'd argue that the being will manifest itself to different people in different degrees. So the painting of Van Gogh's shoes, some people can look at it and they say, look at the brushstrokes. This is not that impressive. I'm not impressed. The being didn't reveal itself to that person. Now, let's say I go look at it, just for example, and I see it, and I'm like, oh, those are hard-working shoes. Then I start to think and ponder about, my shoes get covered in turkey blood, pork blood, spilled ketchup. Wow. I know what it's like to take your shoes off like that at the end of the day. My shoes represent hard work. Through that interaction, I just glimpsed into the being of the painting. That is what I'd argue, is when you are getting an emotional connection to the painting, or you have been able to download something from it, it sparked an idea in your head. Through that exchange, I would say the person has revealed its being, and the being has manifested to me as a being, and that is what I would call it. That is what I'd say. He's going on to different topics, but that's what I would say at this particular moment in time, what the being of the painting would be. And everything we have mentioned, what is being of beings? Really, how is it that we can run around and stand about in the world with our stupid pretensions and our so-called cleverness? Everything we have mentioned is, after all, and nevertheless, if we want to lay hold of being, it is always as if we are reaching into the void. The being we are asking about is almost like nothing, and yet we are always trying to arm and guard ourselves against the presumption of saying that all beings are not. But beings remain undiscoverable, almost like nothing, or in the end entirely so. The word being is then finally just an empty word. It means nothing actual, tangible, and real. Its meaning is an unreal vapor. So in the end, Nietzsche is entirely right when he calls the highest concept, such as being, the final wisp of evaporating reality. Yes, I cannot reach out and touch the being of a painting, but I can feel it. I can feel it process through my body. Indeed, that is like a vapor, okay? Because a gas is like a vapor, and a gas can pass through you without you seeing it, and you can't touch it, yet it affects you. Okay, but it's getting kind of dark here. Who would want to chase after such a vapor? The term for which is just the name for a huge error. I don't see how it's an error. An error would mean it didn't do what it was supposed to do. So if I feel the being of the painting, I would not call that an error simply because I can't touch it. In fact, nothing up to now has been more naively persuasive than the error of being. Being a vapor and an air, what Nietzsche says here about beings is no casual remark, jotted down during the frenzy of labor and preparation for his authentic and never completed work. Instead, it is his guiding concept of being since the earliest days of his philosophical labor. It supports and determines his philosophy from the ground up, but this philosophy remains even now well guarded against the clumsy, trifling opportunities of the horde of scribblers that is becoming ever more numerous around him today. So he goes on, babbles a bit about Nietzsche. Is it being's fault that being is so confused, and is it the fault of the world that it remains so empty? Or is it our fault, because in all our bustling and chasing after beings, we have nevertheless fallen out of being? I say it would be our fault. Yeah, it would be our own brain's cognitive ability and our brain's filtration system of the noumena and the phenomenal world, right? If we want to use a Kantian way of saying it, I would argue it is us. I would not argue that it is the being that is to blame, whether it's a church, a painting. It is simply our own filtration system that will or will not allow us to grasp a being's being. That is what I'd say. He goes down a bit and just kind of blobs around. And later he says, Russia and America seen metaphysically are both the same hopeless frenzy of unchained technology and of the rootless organization of the average man when the farthest corner of the globe has been conquered technically and can be exploited economically, when any incident you like in any place you like at any time you like becomes accessible as fast as you like, when you can simultaneously experience an assassination attempt against a king of France and a symphony concert in Tokyo, when time is nothing but speed, instantaneity, and simultaneity, and the time as history has vanished from all the sign of peoples, when a boxer counts as the great man of a people, when the tallies of millions at mass meeting are a triumph, then yes, then there still looms like a specter over all this uproar the question, what for, where to, and what then? I don't think that's fair. I'm a little biased, so I don't think it's fair to say that society has failed simply because a fighter has become a hero and a great man. I mean, hello. I'm biased in this because I admire Khabib, and I would argue that just because someone's a fighter doesn't mean that they are not a person of triumph, or that they are not something to be admired. So I really disagree with that. The spiritual decline of the earth has progressed so far that peoples are in danger of losing their last spiritual strength, the strength that makes it possible even to see the decline, which is meant in relation to the fate of being, and to appraise it as such. The simple in observation has nothing to do with the cultural pessimism. Well, I'd argue it does, because you're being quite pessimistic, Heidegger. Nor with any optimism either. Of course, for the darkening of the world, the flight of the gods, the destruction of earth, the reduction of human beings to a mass, the hatred and mistrust of everything creative and free have already reached such proportions throughout the whole earth that such childish categories as pessimism and optimism have all become laughable. I don't think that pessimism is a childish category. Pessimistic comedy, pessimistic writing is very deeply connected to nihilism. I would disagree with him that optimism is childish and laughable. Optimism can really help and has scientific studies based upon its cognitive influences on a person who practices it. I just did a grateful post today, so I really disagree with him, but we'll leave it off there. What do you think, family? What do you think about what Heidegger had to say?